Hi, thanks for joining me. My name is Torri. I'll tell you a little bit about that later. But this class obviously is healthy relationships. Let's face it, we all want healthy relationships, right? I don't think any of us would say, nah, I think I'd like an unhealthy relationship. But there are steps we need to take in order to make sure that we have the most healthy relationship possible. So let's get started. Like I said, my name is Torri Baker. I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I've studied a lot, over 20 years in the field of disabilities. I've taken classes at Marshall University in the field of autism studies. I'm a healthy lifestyles trainer and advocate. I've served on many boards and commissions. I'm going to let you read those later. Advocacy and education is not just a job for me. It's a passion, and I'm so happy to be able to do it every day. Always find something you're passionate about. In this class, we'll learn some important things. Some of the things we'll learn is why healthy relationships are important. Different types of relationships. What is a healthy relationship? And boundaries, and rights and responsibilities. Okay, let's face it. You might be asking yourself, what's all the fuss about? Why are healthy relationships so important? From spouse to children, to friends, to parents, to siblings and significant others, healthy relationships build self-esteem, improve mental and emotional health, and help you live a fuller life. And that was a quote by Teddy Johnson. Relationships look different, and that's okay and good, because none of us are the same. But there are certain things that relationships should always be. Relationships should always feel safe. They should always feel relaxed, comfortable, balanced. You don't want one person carrying all the responsibilities of a relationship while the other person doesn't even seem to try. And it should be affirming. You want to be affirming to others. You want to say positive things and be positive to other people, and you want them to do the same for you. There are different types of relationships. I think that's kind of obvious, but every relationship is different and unique. We're going to talk about 6 types of relationships. They're the primary types of relationships, but they're not all of the different types of relationships or varied type of relationships or any of these things. But these are 6 kind of good rules, good relationships. There's family. There's romantic relationships. There's friends. There's acquaintances. There are workplace relationships, and there are strangers. Let's talk about family for a minute. There are many types of families, like I mentioned. Some may live with you, and some may live far away. Family is usually considered people who are related to you biologically, through adoption or marriage. Some examples of family are moms and dads, siblings, if you have siblings, grandparents, step-parents or siblings, because they're family too, and you can have a close connection to them. Aunts and uncles and cousins. I used to always like to play with my cousins. We would go out and just hang out and play in the swamp, and probably not the safest thing to do, but we just had great times. We played Frisbee and So we really bonded, and I'm still very close to many of my cousins. The next type of relationship we're going to talk about is romantic relationships. These can be difficult sometimes, knowing and understanding what your relationship is with somebody that you are romantic with. Romantic relationships are often mean a close connection to another person with physical and or sexual love. They look in love, don't they? Isn't that picture cute? They look so in love. She looks really happy to be with him, and he looks really happy to be with her. Then there are friends. I love this picture. It's just friends going to conference, if you recognize this picture. Maybe you're even in this photo. Friends are people you know well and often spend times doing things together. You may share a common interest with your friend. I have some friends that we like to do things together. One of my friends, we like to go bowling together. But my other friend isn't interested in bowling at all. In fact, she would tell you, no way, I'm not going to do that. But she would like to go to movies, and I like movies, so we go to movies together. Some of our friends hang out in groups. We just like that. We go, we hang out, maybe we go to a restaurant, maybe we go to the park. One of my friends loves to go to festivals. So we always go to festivals. She loves it. And I love it. But I think I like them more because she likes them and she's so happy when she gets to go. There are also workplace relationships. Okay. Workplace relationships are people that you work with or work for you. This is important, okay? Because some types and examples of workplace relationships might be your boss. Most of us have a boss that we work for. If we're employed and we work somewhere, we have a boss. The boss kind of sees over things and usually tells us what we need to do. And then there's coworkers, and they're usually people that also have the same boss or maybe another boss, but that work with us. And maybe we work in the same factory or the same office building. I have a coworker, and in fact, I have a lot of coworkers. And sometimes it's difficult to remember all their names, but I'm learning. And it's great because I get to meet new people. Another example of workplace relationships that I wanted to talk about is support staff. This is important because many times the line between support staff and friend gets blurred. People who work for you as support staff, caregivers, their acquaintance, their workplace relationships. These people aren't necessarily your friends or your family. You may do things with them and activities, but they're being paid to do a job, and they're a workplace relationship. That will become more important when we talk about boundaries. So kind of keep that in the back of your mind when we talk about boundaries. The next is acquaintances. So acquaintances are people that we see occasionally and talk about limited things. We don't talk about everything with them. We don't just overshare necessarily. We just talk about things that might be a limited topic. Like if you meet somebody, I don't know, let's say you meet someone at the library and you start talking to them, and you've talked to them a couple of times, and you start talking to them about books that you share in common that you like. That would be an acquaintance. And you talk about something limited. So the books that you like. Examples might be a friend of someone who you're friends with. Okay, so one of your friends has a friend. They're not necessarily a friend of yours, but you meet them and kind of get to know them because they're your friend's friend. Someone who goes to your place of worship. Somebody that goes to church or synagogue with you. Someone who is there and you know them and you've met them and maybe you know their name and maybe you even know a few things about them, like do they have kids, or do they what kind of things they're interested in. But they're acquaintances. Your barber or hairdresser, okay, you probably talk to them with limited information, like how you want your hair cut, or maybe how the weather is, or, just kind of general things you might talk about. So your barber or your hairdresser might be your acquaintance. Then there are strangers. Strangers are people who do not know you and people who you don't know and don't know you. Okay. So some examples of strangers, although I think many of us know who a stranger is, we're going to go over it because sometimes it's hard to tell the difference between a stranger and an acquaintance and maybe even a friend. If you meet that person again and be able to talk to them more, they may become an acquaintance. But right off the bat, when you first meet them, they're a stranger. People you meet on the bus, you've never met them before. They don't know you and you don't know them. A person you meet online, again, you don't really know them or who they are. You might know their name, and they don't really know you. Even if they say they do, be careful because they may not. Someone you meet at a store or restaurant, like your server who brings your food, a stranger. You don't know them personally, and they don't know you. Someone who stops and asks you for directions. Well, they don't know you. In fact, they don't apparently even know where they're going, so they have to ask you for directions. Always be careful in these situations, but at the same time, they're simply strangers. They want your help to tell them where they need to go. It's important to know that when you meet someone online, they're still a stranger, okay? Many times that gets tricky. You think maybe you're really good friends even, and you've just met them and they're still strangers to you. We're going to talk about boundaries, but in this, remember your boundaries and be safe online. There's going to be another session that talks about internet safety, so I'm not going to go into a lot of that, but make sure that you stay safe. Our third section is about boundaries. All relationships look different, like we talked about before, but they have something in common: boundaries. Boundaries are very important. Every relationship needs them. Every relationship needs boundaries. Even the people that you are the closest to in your life, you need boundaries. Boundaries help us have healthy relationships. And now, after all, that's what our topic is today, healthy relationship. A boundary is personal rules that you have about your relationships. And then also personal rules others have about their relationships. Give you a little bit more about boundaries. Boundaries can be tricky because your personal boundaries might be different than someone else's personal boundaries. And that's okay. You can work together to still respect each other's boundaries. And that's good. So your boundaries are important, and other people should respect them, and vice versa. You should respect other people's boundaries. That's why communication is so important. You need to be able to effectively communicate well your boundaries that you have, and encourage someone else that you're speaking with and you're in a relationship with of some kind of their boundaries. Okay, going to give you an example of some boundaries. This is not all of them by any means. I just want to give you an image of what you're thinking about when you think about boundaries. Hugging or touching in personal space. Some people like to be hugged. Some people don't. If you meet a stranger, example, you're not going to go up and hug them because you don't know. They may not like hugs. And anyway, it's not necessarily appropriate. It's not appropriate to do that. But people have different feelings about things like touching. Some people, I have a friend, and she really would rather, like, even if she's upset or, sad, she would rather me say something to her like, I hear you, I'm listening to you, I'm sorry that you're going through this, rather than to touch her. That's her boundary. There's personal space. Sometimes we call this a bubble. Okay. Some people's bubbles are smaller than others. So I might be comfortable with somebody really close to me, and someone else really wants somebody farther away from them. And that's okay. It's not a reflection on how much you like or dislike the other person. It's a reflection on how comfortable you feel with people in your space. Okay, visiting at work. Okay, well, we're here at work to do work, right? And so having a bunch of visitors would be distracting, not only to me, but to the other coworkers that I have. So things like visiting at work might not be an option. Even if your job allows it, you might want to consider that be a personal boundary. Borrowing and lending money or things. Okay. I know it's easy when someone says, hey, can I borrow $5? Man, I really want a lunch from McDonald's. Can I borrow $5 from you? Now, I'm not saying you should always say, no, you can't borrow this $5, but you need to think about your boundaries. Who do you feel comfortable letting borrow $5 from you? You have to think about things like that. If you give $5 to everybody who asks, soon you're not going to have $5 to spend on your own lunch. So there's things to consider with that. Secrets. Okay, I'm going to give you a personal opinion. You can decide what you choose to do. I don't like secrets. Okay, I'm not talking about, hey, don't tell Mary what I got her for Christmas. I got her this new, video game. I'm not talking about that. Those are good secrets. They're fun. Eventually, Mary's going to find out at Christmas time what you got her. Okay. I'm talking about secrets about other people, secrets that could possibly hurt people or keep people unsafe. They could be unsafe if the secret is kept. So you have to think about the secret. My general rule is I don't keep secrets that might be unhealthy. Reading other people's mail or email. Do you think that's appropriate? Do you think that's a good boundary to have? I don't want somebody reading my email. Would you want someone else just walking in your home and opening your mail and reading it? I wouldn't personally. So that would be a boundary for me. Talking about personal problems. That's a personal preference, not only for you, but another person. So another person might not feel comfortable with you sharing your personal problems. So those are things you need to consider. Okay. The other is accepting or giving a ride to someone, and also social media rules. Again, your social media, being safe online, we'll talk more about that. My boundaries, I talked a little bit, so I'm not going to just read this slide to you because that would be totally boring. But here's something interesting about me. I don't like to be hugged, okay? It doesn't make me feel good. I don't like it. And I communicate that to other people quite effectively. And sometimes people are like, oh, you're not very friendly. You don't like to be hugged. No, it's not that. I just don't feel comfortable with it, okay? So that being said, sometimes I go to my place of worship and other people greet each other with a hug. But they get to me and I will say, I really don't hug. Right now, because of COVID, that's a little bit easier to get away with because people aren't hugging, okay? Fist bump, or, a wave is more appropriate for health reasons. But even before COVID, I don't like to be hugged. Don't call me after 10 p.m. at night unless it is a serious emergency, okay? That will not make me happy because I've already laid down to go to bed. So I don't want to be interrupted. I don't add everyone I know to social media. It's not because I don't like you. You come up to me, oh, give me your Facebook, can I add you as a friend to Facebook? I may or may not. That doesn't mean I like you or dislike you. I just choose not to add everybody I know to Facebook. That bubble I talked about is about 4 feet. You get much closer than 4 feet, I start getting a little nervous, okay? Now, I definitely do not share food or drink with other people, okay? Food or drink. My own husband, who is in a romantic relationship with me, knows that he has to order 2 drinks when we go through the drive-through because I do not drink after him and I do not eat and share food with him off my plate, okay? I don't know why, it's just a boundary. It's important to me that others do not grab me to lead me around. I have a vision disability, okay? So sometimes people, well-meaning people, want to help me, okay? And that's great, but the way they choose to help does not fit with my boundaries, okay? So don't grab me and lead me around. That doesn't make me feel safe, okay? So you've got these boundaries. What are you going to do with them? How do you tell people your boundaries and still not be rude about it? I mean, we still want to have healthy communication that's positive and friendly, but still assertive, and still tell the person clearly what your boundaries might be. So, thank you for calling me, for instance. I am very busy during the day, so I don't usually answer my phone. I will call you back after work. I have a personal rule that I'm not friends with Facebook with people from work. Okay, that way the person doesn't feel like you're just singling them out. Well, I don't want to be friends with you on Facebook. Okay, that's not, a healthy way to communicate that. I would feel more comfortable if you didn't try to eat off my plate versus what I might say, if somebody eats off my plate, get away from my plate, get your own food. Yeah, probably not the most effective communication. So I would feel more comfortable. It's a boundary. It's an I statement. This makes me feel comfortable. This does not. Please don't stand so close to me. I need some time and space, and that's okay. Always recognize when you need time and space, always, okay? So if you need time and space, please take it. Don't feel like you have to be around people just because you're obligated or you think people think you have to be. Always recognize how you feel about your time and space. And let me think about it. I'll get back to you. It's okay not to answer right away. Take your time. Okay, the next part is rights and responsibilities in relationships. This is very important. It's not real difficult, but it's important. My rights. Just like anyone else, people with disabilities have rights. I'm sure you've heard this before. I'm sure that you're aware of it. But I'm going to go over it again because sometimes we forget and sometimes other people forget. We have to politely set our boundaries and remind them that we have rights. Example, we have the right to dignity and respect. We have the right to privacy, confidentiality, and freedom. We have the right to sexuality and sexual expression. This is important because people with disabilities also have romantic relationships, and we have the right to have sexual relationships with those we're in romantic relationships with. We have the right to set boundaries. We talked all about boundaries. We have the right to set those. We don't lose that right just because we have a disability. Never forget that. This is the most important right that you have. This is so important that if I could put 700 exclamation points after this, I would. Okay. You have the right to say no to any relationship or activity that makes you feel uncomfortable. Any relationship, anything, you have the right to say no. And in that, you have the right to be respected. That person needs to stop as soon as you say no. So you have some responsibilities too. It's great that you have all these rights, but you have some responsibilities because you want other people to have rights. And so other people can have rights. Here are some of your responsibilities. I have the responsibility to treat others with dignity and respect. Remember, you want dignity and respect, so it makes sense that you treat others that way. I should accept others' privacy and boundaries. Again, that's what you expect from others. That's what you should give others. You should always respect other people when they say no to a situation or relationship. This can be tough sometimes because let's say you meet somebody and you want to be in a romantic relationship with them and you really like them, you think they're cute or whatever, and you really want to go out on a date with them, or you really want to be boyfriend or girlfriend, and they say no. That can be hard to hear. I'm not going to lie. It can be hard. It might even really upset you to the point that you cry or get angry. But the reality is that they have the right to say no, just like you do. And you need to respect that always. I want to thank you for listening to me, thinking about healthy relationships, thinking about boundaries, exercising your rights and responsibilities. And I wanted to ask at this point if there were any questions that you might have about healthy relationships.